Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick, and I bought this old Honda Benly. It's a CA95, which means it's a 150 twin, and it's a 1964 model year. It's been painted this lovely, sort of dull metallic red, and it's a little worse for wear. But it looks like mostly everything is here. The engine spins freely, I can shift through the gears, and I think I'm going to be able to get it running. The previous owner says it's been sitting for probably upwards of 30 years, but it looks like it's been inside a garage at least. Rust is fairly minimal, all things considered, but everything rubber in the fuel system is probably completely rotten. I dug into it a little bit already, just to look things over, check for spark, and testing some of the electrical functions. I found that the carburetor slide is really stuck, so I'm going to soak it in penetrating oil and see if it frees up. I have a feeling most of this tune-up is going to be carburetor related. Here's a tip. If you're planning on storing your motorcycle for any length of time, make sure the carburetor is bone dry. You don't want any gas in there because it will gum up after a few months, and after a few years it will leave these really tough white deposits that are very difficult to remove. Most old Hondas require a battery to run, and this one is no different. I tested for spark using an old 6-volt battery I had laying around, then I bought the proper sized one. While that's charging, I'll tear into the carb. First step is to remove it from the bike. It's a little cramped in the pressed steel frame, but it came out without too much fuss. Next I had to try to free the slide. I tried using a plastic brush handle, but it snapped. This thing is really stuck. I cut the throttle cable and took it over to the vise to carefully apply some heat. After a couple taps, the slide started moving. I pulled it out by what is left of the throttle cable, levering a pair of vice grips against the carb body. I took the carb all the way apart and set it to soak in some kerosene. Now it's time to take the tank off for cleaning. These rubber hoses and tank mount bushings were very tough. Speaking of tough, this gas cap is really on there. The rubber seal seems to have fused to the corrosion on the cap and on the tank, but I was finally able to get it off using a strap wrench. I'll fill it with evaporust and set it aside for a few days. Looking the bike over with the tank removed, I started to find all sorts of artifacts of the previous owner. I also found what I assumed to be a social security number etched into various parts of the bike. Is that something that people used to do? I decided to address the elephant ears in the room. Now that the carb has been soaking for a couple days, it's time to finish cleaning and reassemble it. I used a brass bristle brush to remove the softened crud. Finally, I blew out all of the passages using compressed air. I felt a ridge on the throttle slide, which was preventing it from moving smoothly inside the carb body. It's probably from me trying to pry it out when it was stuck. I used a file and some sandpaper to remove the ridge. This will of course cut through the chrome plating and make the slide more susceptible to corrosion and wear, but for the short term I figured it was worth a shot. I bought a rebuild kit for this carb, but I found that almost nothing fit. I don't know if they used different types of carburetors over the production run of the CA95 or if this was just a crap kit. I ended up comparing all of the parts and cleaning most of the old jets and just reusing those. With everything properly cleaned and the ridge removed, the slide now moves smoothly. I made a new float bowl gasket using some thick gasket paper. It will work alright for now, but I ordered a proper one, which by itself ended up being about as expensive as the entire useless rebuild kit that I bought. The fuel valve is an unconventional design and it was totally seized. I do intend to dig into it eventually, but for now I'm using an aftermarket petcock that mounts using this aluminum flange. Before installing it, I cleaned up the threads with a tap. I reinstalled the carb and fitted a new throttle cable. I also reinstalled the gas tank after flushing it out with a vapor rust and then kerosene. Now it's time to see if it'll start. Man, do I love electric start. While taking it for a few test rides, I noticed some bogging when you give it throttle, and a high RPM misfire. The bogging turned out to be a fuel flow issue, which was fixed by rerouting the fuel tubing. And the misfire went away after I cleaned the points and replaced the condenser. bike is perfect for city riding. It was basically a Grom 50 years before the Grom was released. Except this has a twin-cylinder engine, so it sounds better. The brakes are adequate, and it is capable of locking up the rear wheel in a panic stop situation. Ask me how I know. It has plenty of power for accelerating away from lights, and it has a top speed, realistically, of around 55 to 60 miles per hour. The suspension is rudimentary and springy. I'm sure it would benefit from a damper rebuild. This bike represents some of the earliest days of Honda's presence in North America. And yet, even this funny-looking, now 59-year-old little motorcycle gives you a sense of dependability that Honda has become synonymous with in the decades since. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed making it, and I can't wait to keep riding and fixing up the Benly. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're always notified whenever I upload a new video. See you next time.